Well, thanks. First of all, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Professor Bradford, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here and meeting all the students and Jamie. I had a chance to talk to Harji and Theo a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago. So as you said, well, here's my LinkedIn profile. Too, my name is Luis Patricio. I've been working with the London Poverty Research Center in the last few years with the SDGs, localizing the SDGs. And my background is in urban management. I have a master's in urban management, and I've been working with urban planning in different capacities as a nonprofit or part of committees and advisory committees, and working with local and regional governments in different ways. So those are the two topics that are really close to my heart. So when I got the invitation, Michelle, was really excited to be here. My presentation will have about 25 minutes. Is that okay? And then we have some time for questions and discussions.
Perfect.
And I'll try to be as brief as possible. All right. So like I said, my two words were urban literacy. And this is kind of a concept that permeates all the work that I've been doing. And I won't be talking about urban literacy specifically, but I didn't want to share this, the concept with you, and to help understand it a little bit better. Is you can think about the traditional literacy that we talk about. We want to become sophisticated readers and writers, but we really need to start from the beginning with the building blocks of the ABCs and then words, and then we know how to form phrases, and we know write little poems, and then we become experts. So the way I see is for as urban planning and urban governance is the same thing. We really need to practice on a daily basis our urban literacy, and I'll speak a little bit. You'll see on the examples that I have on this presentation. So the three things I will talk about are sustainable development goals, participatory urban planning, and then I'll try to kind of put the two together, although I hope you'll see the links, and you probably know the links already, before I get to item 3 in my presentation. Jumping right in, the SDGs, I'll talk about a little bit about the global SDGs and the local SDGs. So just a quick question as we start, two quick questions actually. Do you know the global SDGs? And you can put that on the chat. I can probably check the chat later. I'll give you 10, 15 seconds. It could be a yes or no. It could be, I know a lot, I love the SDGs. I don't really know what that means, or I've been working with them, or whatever it is, just to get a sense of where you guys are at. And the second question, do you know the local SDGs? The localized ones? Same thing. A few more no's this time. So it wasn't a tricky question, but maybe it was, because the local goals and the global goals are pretty much the same, are the 17 goals. This is becoming a more and more established framework. And we didn't want to recreate the wheel here. And we're using the same 17 goals that are used by the United Nations, were created by the United Nations. And there are different ways to kind of categorize them. And I won't go into detail of what is the history, how they were created, and what do they mean specifically. And there's a lot of literature out there, and even an amazing video from Pillar Nonprofit Network, a presentation there. You can go and check that out if you haven't yet. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with the SDGs by now. But there is the essence of the SDGs that all the work that I've been doing the last few years that I wanted to share with you here is the integration. And there are 4 aspects of integration. Is what we call the triple bottom line, and there are different ways of categorizing that. You see the environmental, social, and economic, planet, people, and prosperity. And notice that I didn't say profit, it's prosperity. Biosphere, society, and economy. And then the different levels of government, the cross-sector collaboration, and Pillar has been a great stakeholder in this process of bringing those different sectors together. And at last but not least, very important one is leave no one behind, which is explicit principle of the SDGs. And I summarize all those four aspects as integrations in a sense. So the SDGs, and I appreciate one of the students said poorly executed. The SDGs are really this beautiful vision of what we need to achieve sustainability, and have these principles of integration and cross-sector collaboration and leaving no one behind. But really, when it comes down to the more granular level, we need to do that translation process to make it more meaningful to our city. So like I said, I don't want to go into details, and there are a lot of the indicators, global indicators that are relevant, but I really want to highlight some of them that are not so relevant, and why the translation work was so important to do. So those, you can just take a look at them. Those are some of the indicators that are part of the United Nations SDGs. And as you can see, they might be useful, but maybe they're not the most important ones to really be paying attention in a North American city such as London. So on the work that we did, one of the things that we wanted to achieve is to really understand what is missing, and not necessarily what is missing, but what is not enough. There's not enough depth on those issues that we need to really pay more attention to. And those are not all the things that we added to the framework, but it's certainly this 6 of the main gaps, if you will, that were identified in the SDG framework, the global one. And we wanted to really explore more and put the spotlight on those issues, as you can see in the screen. And then just to give you a few examples of the indicators that we created, some of the local indicators that we created: housing affordability. I'm pretty sure everybody's aware of our housing crisis and our homelessness challenge. Absolute energy use, and this is when you say absolute, is that recognizing that there is a hard limit, there is a physical limit to the amount of energy that we use. So it's not a matter of just percentage or efficiency. It's really, there is a hard ceiling, a ceiling that once we reach that ceiling, we're done. Non-communicable diseases, and I don't know, maybe we need to add something about global pandemics on our local indicators, but it's not there yet. And mode share when it comes to transportation, one of big challenges of Canada too, and living wage. So those are just, and obviously we have with the SERB and all the discussions we have, even conversations about the universal basic income. So those are definitely relevant discussions to have, and different relevant indicators to track. All that list is on our beta site, thecommunitygoals.ca. You can see that list. You can see the work that we have been doing. We don't have the data for those indicators yet. We barely started to collect that information. On the website, we also have the report. We reached out to over 100 individuals. We had 69 interviews, I think, from people from all the different sectors to understand each one of the SDGs and what they mean, how they're framing the conversation here in London. And we analyzed 13 documents, local documents, and dozens of other SDG international and national documents to really understand how we can use this framework here in our city. So that's it for the SDGs. I'll jump into urban planning a little bit. And I hope that with the first section of the presentation, you can see that how much related to urban governance and planning the SDGs are. If you zoom in, and we talked about transportation and public health and housing and land use and economic development and energy, and all those things, they are part of discussions around urban planning. And if you zoom out, like I said, the main idea is integration. And obviously, when you're talking about city governance, one of the main challenges is how to integrate all those different systems that are coexisting in time and space. And there are a lot of, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but there are definitely different points of view and different interests that needs to be brought together. So I want to start with this example, because I think it's really important to, when we're talking about urban planning, to understand that we are not talking in urban governance. We're not talking only about the infrastructure, the built environment of the city. Jan Gehl is a Danish architect and urban planner that started his career on the 60s, and he was highly influenced by his wife, who was a psychologist. So from the beginning, he really tried to understand the social and cultural dimensions of urban planning. And one of the things that he noticed from right from the beginning is the most interesting thing in cities for people is other people. So he really tried to understand, especially in public spaces, who are those people? What are they doing? Why did they stop? And for how long? And with that information, really measuring and quantifying that information to develop cities that are welcoming and inclusive for all. And if you don't know Jan Gehl, you definitely should read and see some of his videos. He created the first pedestrian street in Copenhagen, and he really transformed the city. And even if you know about the transformation that New York City went through with the Bloomberg administration and Janet Sari-Khan, he was one of the main consultants during this project. So I really wanted to start there with Jan Gehl and really drive home the importance of bringing the hard and the soft, the built infrastructure and the living social cultural dimensions of urban planning. And then a little closer here, we have Professor Allard. He's a professor at the University of Waterloo, from the Urban Realities Lab. And he says that in a very real sense, we're no longer there as we used to be. And our physical surroundings are no longer as real as they used to be. So he talks about a failure of the average person in engaging in the dialogue of city building. And he explains that there's a disconnect that comes from a lack of understanding of what are the principles of urban design. And that touches on what I was talking about, urban literacy. It really needs, for real engagement, we really need people to understand those principles. And I'm not talking about learning urban planning and becoming an expert on urban planning, but really as a literacy to read and write the city that you live on a daily basis, meaning being on public spaces. So for Professor Allard, he identified two main causes of this disconnect, and it's basically cars and smartphones, as we're not engaging with people and we're not engaging in our physical space as we used to be because of those two technological elements. And God knows how that this will look like in a world post-COVID. So we see the two, and was playing with the idea of shift to the middle that I totally was inspired by Pillar, shift to the middle. So the shift to the middle in urban planning, we have at one side, we really need to start planning and creating cities that will invite people to come. So we have this big picture, this external influence, if you will, and you also have the personal decisions of individual citizens to be in the public space and interact with other people. So how do you create this? How do you allow this to unfold and create the ideal environment for urban governance. So this is an example from, was an article from those two authors, and they're did a study, and they look at cities mostly from Asia, and they noticed that in Japan, and this is Tokyo, the way that the city developed is a very different pattern. They really didn't, and Tokyo, I think, probably is the biggest city in the world. If not, it's, top 3, 5. It's definitely a huge city. So as Tokyo grew and was engulfing all the small towns and villages in the metropolitan area, different from the patterns that we see in North America, they didn't try to redevelop all those small towns as it went. It was basically providing the basic infrastructure, lighting and sewers and water treatment and all that kind of stuff, and transportation network. But the way that the land was used was really how it was already built over time, historically, by the citizens, by the residents, and it was kept as it was, and it could still develop in a more organic way. The authors, they give a counterexample of a region in India called Dharavi, that is also a self-organizing system, is also capable of reinventing and adapting itself to the needs of the people who live there. But contrary to the Asian cities, it was seen as something that is, they didn't want to support that. So that all those systems, basic infrastructure systems that are put in place in Asian cities as they expand to the edges, in Dharav is the contrary. So they are left to their own devices to try and provide those basic services for themselves and really create a difficult situation. And like I said, there's this trap of the dualism of formal and planned being associated with modern and good, and what is informal and it's more organic or messy, it's associated with primitive and bad. And this is not necessarily true, and as the example from Tokyo, but in a general way, this is how cities are developed and planned, and it is how they grow in most North American cities. If you think about it, it's a kind, it's you can call it kind of a colonial habit to really impose the attempts to control and impose a certain type of order that you believe is the right one, without really understanding that that might be established order under that what might look like chaos at first sight. So urban governance really comes, a participatory urban planning really comes from the place where those two can meet together. And I love, I don't know about you guys, I love Sunfest. And I remember the first time I went to Sunfest here in London. So it's for people who are not from London, this is kind of a multicultural musical festival that happens in the summer, and it's free. It's in the, public park downtown, and everybody can come. And for me, when I moved to London 4 years ago, the first time I went to Sunfest, I said, who are all those people? Like, I didn't know that London was that diverse. I saw all kinds of people, and I never see those people on, whenever I go, I just don't see that all that difference. And this is a book called Intercultural City, and the author makes a difference between, and sorry, by the way, I'm not very good at looking at the chat, and I see that sometimes it blinks there. If anyone, Michelle, if you need me to stop, or if there's anything that I need to comment on, just unmute and let me know. They make a difference between what the intercultural city and the multicultural city. So a multicultural city is it's that city that holds different cultures, but they're not necessarily mingling, they're not integrating. And Sunfest for me, it's an example of how you can integrate those cultures, but it's something that happens once a year. How do we create a city that allow that to happen just normally, just every day, just everywhere, and not, you know, this big cultural event that I think it's beautiful, but how do extrapolate that and make that just a trivial, just basic urban experience of everyone in the city. Um, um, and Again, I talked a little bit about the SDGs, a little bit about urban governance and the different aspects of what bringing a city together looks like. If I didn't, if you can't see a connection between SDGs and urban governance yet, then I give up, and I'll just direct you guys to this. The new urban agenda was published recently by the UN Habitat, and they show how the SDGs are applied to cities. They even have an online crash course for free if you guys want to make. So really, it's a great resource if you want to check that out. But still, I want to drive. Well, I should say I want to ride home the point that cities are really the ideal state for the SDGs. And this is one of the reports that we analyzed, where many of them say that really a lot of the SDG work is done at the city level, because cities are the ones that derive the most value from the integrating social, economic, and environmental dimensions of this sustainable development. And also the local governments are the ones who are closest to the community groups that are actually implementing the work that needs to be implemented, that have the knowledge about the challenges that we are facing and the knowledge about how to solve those problems. So really, the importance of the SDGs in the city is a big one. SDGs, the cities even have their own SDG. SDG 11 is sustainable cities and communities, and this infographic is actually it's not updated. There are more connections there, but you can see how the SDG 11 is connected to many of the other SDGs. And I think this is what the SDGs and urban governance also, what they have in common is this, and I think someone mentioned also in the words, is the shared vision. We need to have a shared vision for sustainable development, and we need to have a shared vision for urban governance, and also a shared knowledge. And there are multiple ways. Like, I think we've been discussing about a planning citizen academy or something like that, and really that space where we can bring people together to teach and learn at the same time, and create this shared knowledge. We can have a way to understand what are the challenges and have a common understanding of what are the challenges are really important. And we even submitted to the local London Community Recovery Network a local tracking tool to try and suggest that we can create this shared knowledge and understanding of our challenges. A great model that a framework that I've been working with, and I'm almost done, is the Integral City, and they have 4 voices and talking about integration. And what was the other word? The common approach. I think it was Jamie who mentioned that. The 4 voices of the civic managers, the citizens, the civil society, who's what they call the NGOs, the nonprofit organizations, and the civic developers, the business and the innovators. Bringing those voices together, how rich that discussion can be. And just to give you one example here, we have, for example, the knowledge from one of the voices, the civic manager voice, saying that we have 93% of our goals, they are either complete or they are on target. But I would love to hear what the other three voices have to say, what the citizens, businesses, and nonprofits would say if they were asked the same questions. Are we 93% okay? Or are we, is it better? Is it worse? And more than that, I would love to see, after hearing the four voices, the one in the middle, the participatory voice, that shared voice, bringing together the four and really understanding the things that we see different and the things that we have in common. Um, and that's what I had to share with you. Thank you.